The glass slipped from Jasmine Monroe's fingers before she could stop it. She didn't remember dropping it. She didn't remember much after that, only the spinning ceiling of the hotel corridor, the carpet rushing up to meet her, and a pair of cold, dark eyes staring down at her before everything went black. She had spent weeks convincing herself that night meant nothing, that whatever happened in that hotel suite was a wound she could bandage with silence and move forward. She had been 22, trusting, and completely unprepared for what her own blood was capable of. Her name was Jasmine Monroe, and she had learned early that the world was not built to protect women like her. She grew up in a house that looked perfect from the outside. Her father, Congressman Gerald Monroe, was the kind of man who shook hands in front of cameras and delivered speeches about family values while his own daughter ate dinner alone. When he remarried, Jasmine gained a stepmother named Vivian and a half-sister named Camille, and lost whatever remained of her father's attention. Camille was beautiful in the way that weapons are beautiful. Polished, deliberate, and designed to cause damage. She and Vivian moved through the Monroe household like they owned it, which, eventually, they did. Jasmine learned to take up less space. To speak only when spoken to. To smile through the kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises because it never touches the skin. She had one thing they couldn't take from her boyfriend, Marcus. Or so she believed. On the night of her 22nd birthday, the family threw a celebration at the Grand Meridian Hotel. It was the first time in years they had included her. She should have known then. Generosity from people who have never been generous is not a gift. It's a setup. Camille handed her a glass of champagne near the end of the night, smiling with teeth that gleamed too brightly under the chandelier light. "Happy birthday, Jazz," she said. "You deserve tonight." Jasmine drank it. Every last drop. What happened next unfolded in fragments she would spend years trying to piece together. The room tilting. The music distorting. Marcus's voice somewhere behind her, and then Camille's laughter, bright and careless, pulling him in the opposite direction. A hotel employee guiding her into an elevator. A door opening. A bed. Darkness. She woke up in a suite that did not belong to her. The morning light cut through floor-to-ceiling windows and revealed a room that was not the one she had been assigned. White marble. A skyline view. Expensive silence. And on the armchair across the room, perfectly dressed in a charcoal suit, sat a man she had never seen in her life. He wasn't looking at her. He was reading something on his phone, jaw set, expression unreadable. The kind of stillness that comes not from peace, but from discipline, as if he had trained himself to feel nothing in public and had forgotten to turn it off in private. "You're awake," he said without looking up. Jasmine pulled the sheets to her chin. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Where am I?" "My room." He set the phone down then and looked at her dark eyes, sharp and assessing. "You were placed here last night. I assume by mistake. I slept in the other suite." She searched his face for something to be afraid of and found only controlled patience. That frightened her more than anger would have. "I need to leave," she said. "The door is not locked." She gathered her things with shaking hands and walked out without learning his name. He did not offer it. She did not ask. She told herself the night was over. That it had been a mistake, a horrible, humiliating mistake, and that she would never think about it again. She was wrong on every count. 3 months later, Jasmine sat in a clinic bathroom staring at a test that rearranged the entire architecture of her future. She told her father first, because she still believed, somewhere beneath all the evidence to the contrary, that he was her father before he was a politician. She was wrong about that too. Gerald Monroe did not embrace his daughter. He did not ask if she was all right. He stood at the window of his home office, hands clasped behind his back, and said, "This cannot happen, Jasmine. Do you understand what this would do to my campaign? I'm your daughter," she said. "And this family has a reputation." He turned then, and she saw it clearly, not cruelty exactly, but something worse. Indifference dressed up as responsibility. "I'll arrange everything. You'll be taken care of. But this cannot happen." She made an appointment. She told herself it was the only option. She sat in the waiting room with her hands folded in her lap and her face carefully blank, the way she had learned to be blank in rooms where no one was really seeing her. A man in a dark suit appeared at the reception desk and asked for her by name. He was a lawyer. He placed a manila envelope on the table between them and folded his hands over it with the particular calm of someone delivering information that would detonate. "Miss Monroe," he said, "the gentleman from the Grand Meridian has been identified through hospital records. His name is Han Ji-hoon. He is the sole heir to the Han Group conglomerate, one of the largest privately held corporations in Korea. He is currently worth approximately $14 billion. He paused. "He does not know about the pregnancy. He has not sent me. I represent the family's legal interests on an ongoing retainer, and I became aware of the situation through channels I am not at liberty to disclose." Another pause. "He would want to know, Miss Monroe. But that decision belongs to you. In the meantime, the family is prepared to offer full financial support, complete medical coverage, educational provisions, and absolute confidentiality for as long as you require." The room was very quiet. Jasmine looked at the envelope, then at the window, then at the door where, a few minutes ago, she had been prepared to walk through and come out different, smaller, hollowed. One more thing given up. She picked up her bag. "Tell them I'm keeping my baby," she said. "And I don't need their money." She walked out of that clinic and did not look back. Ethan Han Monroe came into the world on a cold morning in February, 7 pounds and furious, with his father's dark eyes and his mother's stubborn jaw. Jasmine held him in the delivery room with no one beside her, no family, no partner, no one, and felt something settle in her chest that she didn't have a word for. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was closer to resolve. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The years that followed were not gentle. She worked mornings at a financial services firm and evenings at a tutoring center, completing her accounting degree between shifts and Ethan's nap schedules. She learned to budget in increments so small they would have embarrassed the people she grew up around. She learned that pride is a luxury and sleep is a currency, and that a child's laugh at the end of a long day is worth more than anything her father's house had ever contained. Ethan grew into a bright, curious boy who asked too many questions and loved maps and had the unsettling habit of studying people's faces like he was memorizing them for later. He knew his father was Korean. He knew his father didn't know about him. He accepted this the way children accept difficult truths, completely, quietly, and with a depth that only surfaces years later. Camille, meanwhile, got engaged to a real estate developer with old money and new ambition. She posted their life in careful squares, vacations and flower arrangements and dinners at restaurants with dress codes. She had won, by every metric she had invented for winning. She had no idea what was coming. It began with a photograph. Han Ji-hoon was reviewing a profile on a potential business acquisition when his assistant placed a newspaper clipping on his desk, a local society piece about Congressman Monroe's family. Camille was pictured at the center, radiant in red, and beside her, half turned away from the camera, was a woman Ji-hoon had not seen in 6 years, but had never entirely forgotten. He had thought about that night more than he would ever admit. Not with guilt. He hadn't known enough to feel guilty, but with a particular unresolved weight that attached itself to unfinished things. He had hired someone quietly, years ago, to find her. The trail had gone cold. He had told himself to let it go. He told his assistant to clear his afternoon. The investigation took 11 days. When it returned changed everything. He sat very still when the report landed on his desk. He read it twice. Then he set it down and looked out the window at the Jeju city skyline, the water in the distance, flat and indifferent, and breathed through something he was not prepared to name. He had a son. A 6-year-old boy named Ethan who apparently loved geography and had a habit of humming while he read, who attended a public school in Atlanta and was described by his teacher as extraordinarily perceptive, who had his father's face. Ji-hoon was on a flight within the hour. He did not call ahead. He understood that arriving announced would give Jasmine the opportunity to prepare defenses, and he suspected she had become very good at defenses. He had a car take him to the school pickup line on a Wednesday afternoon and sat there like a man who had no idea what he was doing, which was accurate. When Ethan walked out of the building, Ji-hoon stopped breathing. The boy was unmistakable. He moved through the crowd with quiet self-possession, backpack over one shoulder, scanning the line until he found a woman standing at the edge of it, tall, composed, with natural hair pinned back and an expression that managed to be both guarded and warm at the same time. Jasmine Monroe had become someone. That was the only way Ji-hoon could think to frame it. Whatever softness the world had tried to crush out of her, she had converted into something structural, a way of standing, of watching, of holding her son's hand that communicated, without words, that she was the last line between him and everything dangerous. He stepped out of the car. She saw him before he reached them. He watched the recognition move across her face, confusion first, then clarity, then something she shut down very quickly. "Ethan," she said quietly, "go wait by the bench." Ethan looked at Ji-hoon with those dark eyes, his eyes, and obeyed without argument. The silence between Jasmine and Ji-hoon lasted approximately 4 seconds and felt considerably longer. "How did you find us?" she said. "Does it matter?" "Yes." He looked at Ethan on the bench, small and serious, drawing something in his notebook. "He looks like my father," Ji-hoon said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "My father died when I was 8. I have one photograph of him at that age. It's the same face." Jasmine said nothing. He could see her working out whether to be moved by this or to use it as a reason to be more guarded. "I'm not here to take anything from you," Ji-hoon said. "I want you to know that first. I missed 6 years because I didn't know. I'm here because I can't miss any more." "You missed 6 years," she said carefully, "because the circumstances of how this happened were—" She stopped. "Reset. This isn't a conversation for a school parking lot." "No," he agreed. "It isn't. I'll come wherever you say. I'll wait as long you need. But I'm not leaving Jeju City until we've had it." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Ethan, who had stopped drawing and was watching them both with the expression of a child who understands more than adults expect. "Saturday," she said finally. "Public place. You get 1 hour." Ji-hoon nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," she said. "I'm doing this for him. Not for you." She collected Ethan and walked away without looking back. But Ji-hoon noticed that Ethan did look back. Once, quickly, with those eyes that were either searching for something or had already found it. The 1-hour meeting on Saturday became 2. Then 3. Ethan, who had been briefed in terms Jasmine thought were age-appropriate, sat across from Ji-hoon and said, with devastating directness, "Are you actually my dad, or are you just saying that?" Ji-hoon looked at him steadily. "I am," he said. "And I'm sorry I wasn't there before." Ethan considered this with the gravity of a philosopher. "Mom says sorry doesn't fix things. You have to do different." "She's right," Ji-hoon said. "What would different look like to you?" Ethan thought about it. "Come to my geography competition. It's in 3 weeks. Mom always comes alone." Ji-hoon looked at Jasmine across the table. She had the expression of a woman who had not authorized this negotiation and was not sure how to stop it. "I'll be there," Ji-hoon said. He was. He sat in the 3rd row in a school auditorium with folding chairs and fluorescent lighting, completely out of place in every conceivable way, and watched Ethan Monroe place first in the regional competition and sprint directly to his mother with his ribbon, and then turn, deliberately, and hold it up for Ji-hoon to see. The weeks that followed built themselves quietly. Ji-hoon was patient in a way that surprised Jasmine, not the cold patience of a man tolerating inconvenience, but the focused patience of someone who had decided something and was committed to seeing it through. He learned Ethan's rhythms. He sat through the geography competitions and the school plays. He called when he said he would call. He did not push. He also did not pretend the history between him and Jasmine was uncomplicated. One evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, she told him about the drink, about Camille, about the clinic waiting room and the lawyer and the years that followed. She told it flatly, without dramatics, watching his face for the reaction she expected. What she got instead was a silence so absolute it was almost loud. Then Ji-hoon said, very quietly, "I want to say something, but I need you to know it is not an excuse for the time that was lost. It is only a response to what you just told me." He paused. "The people who did this to you will answer for it. I will make certain of that." "I don't need you to fight for me," Jasmine said. "I know," he said. "But it isn't about need. It's about what's right." She didn't respond. But that night, for the first time in 6 years, She slept without waking up at 2 a.m. to check that the doors were locked. Ji-hoon had taken an estate outside Jeju City for the duration of his stay. When he invited them to move in temporarily, more space, better security, Ethan's request, Jasmine refused twice and then watched Ethan spend 40 minutes explaining to her, with maps he had drawn himself, why it was strategically advantageous. She moved in on a Sunday. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself she was doing it for Ethan. She told herself a great many things, standing at the window of that estate looking out at the coast, before she admitted, quietly, to no one but herself, that she had started to look forward to the evenings when Ji-hoon came home. She wasn't ready to say it out loud. But the thought had moved in, and it had no intention of leaving. The invitation arrived on a Friday, a private business gala hosted by one of Ji-hoon's senior partners, a formal affair at the Meridian Grand Ballroom. Ji-hoon had to attend. He asked Jasmine to come. She almost said no. She was good at saying no. But her best friend Nia, who had driven 3 hours to Jeju City specifically to talk sense into her, stood in the doorway of the estate's dressing room with a gown she had somehow already procured and said, "You have been hiding in this beautiful house long enough. You put on this dress and you walk into that room and you let the world see what surviving looks like." Jasmine put on the dress. It was deep gold, floor-length, the kind of thing that didn't ask for attention but commanded it anyway. She arrived at the gala with Nia, not with Ji-hoon. They had agreed to meet inside. She had wanted that margin of independence, that small proof that she was still her own person walking through her own door. She was 3 minutes into the room when she saw them. Camille was standing near the champagne display in a white gown, laughing too loudly at something her fiancé had just said. Marcus stood slightly behind her, hand at her back, wearing an expression that Jasmine recognized, the careful blankness of a man pretending he was exactly where he meant to be. Camille saw her first. The laugh didn't stop, but something shifted in her eyes, a sharpening, a recalibration. "Jasmine." She said the name like a conclusion. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I was invited," Jasmine said simply. Camille's gaze moved over her with the practiced efficiency of someone taking inventory. "You look well," she said, which was Camille's way of saying she had expected otherwise. Marcus cleared his throat. "Jazz," he said. "It's been a while." "It has," she agreed. She looked at him with the particular piece of someone who has already grieved a thing completely and come out the other side. He looked older, smaller. She felt nothing that required tending to. "What brings you to an event like this?" Camille said, tilting her champagne glass. Her tone carried that old familiar edge, playful and cutting, designed to make Jasmine feel like an intruder. "These things can be intimidating if you're not used to the environment." "Camille." Nia's voice carried the specific warning frequency of a woman who has been waiting a long time to deploy it. "I'm just asking," Camille said sweetly. The ballroom doors opened. It was the kind of entrance that doesn't require announcement. The room shifted a dozen small movements, people straightening, conversations lowering, attention redirecting toward the entrance. Han Ji-hoon walked in with the unhurried confidence of a man who understood that the room would wait for him, because it always did. Several executives moved in his direction. He bypassed every one of them. He crossed the ballroom floor without stopping, without looking at anyone except Jasmine, and when he reached her, he cupped her face in both hands and kissed her, not briefly, not perfunctorily, but with the deliberateness of a man making a statement he had been composing for months. The room went completely silent. When he stepped back, his eyes were still on her face. She could hear her own pulse. "I should have done that sooner," he said quietly. Around them, the silence fractured into whispers. Ji-hoon finally turned and acknowledged the room with the minimal nod of a man who has completed the only thing that mattered and would now tolerate the rest of the evening. Camille's champagne glass hovered, forgotten, halfway to her mouth. Marcus looked like a man watching a door close permanently from the wrong side of it. It might have ended there, a beautiful, decisive moment that the gossip columns would dissect for weeks. But Camille had never known when to stop. "Careful," she said, loud enough for the circle around them to hear, her voice carrying that particular pitch of manufactured concern. "She has a history of latching onto wealthy men when her options run out. It's a pattern, honestly. I'd look into it before." "Enough." Ji-hoon's voice was not raised. It didn't need to be. He turned to face Camille with the full, undivided attention of a man who had decided to be done being careful. "You should think very carefully," he said, "about how you speak about the woman I love." He let that land. Let the room hold it. Then, quietly, "and the mother of my son." The gala did not so much descend into chaos as it tilted a slow, collective intake of breath followed by the rapid, overlapping percussion of a secret becoming public in real time. Camille went pale under her foundation. Her fiancé looked at her with an expression that was asking questions he hadn't known he needed to ask. Jasmine felt Ji-hoon's hand find hers. She let it. The next morning, the story was everywhere. A journalist who had been at the gala filed a piece before midnight. By dawn, it had expanded, Han Ji-hoon confirming a 6-year-old son with an Algeria woman, the family of Congressman Gerald Monroe now under scrutiny, the drugging allegation that had surfaced through Jasmine's hospital records, old hotel security footage, text messages that Camille, in her certainty she would never be caught, had never thought to delete. Camille's fiancé released a statement ending their engagement by noon. Her business connections withdrew quietly and quickly, the way money always moves when a scandal threatens to become a liability. Vivian, who had known and covered and conspired, found that the same political circles who had welcomed her now had no memory of ever doing so. Gerald Monroe sat in his office and looked at the photograph of himself and Jasmine he had kept in the bottom drawer of his desk, the one from her high school graduation, the one where she was smiling at the camera and he was looking somewhere else, and understood, at 63, what it meant to waste something irreplaceable. He called her. She answered. "I need you to know that I am sorry," he said. "Not for the cameras. Not because there are consequences. Because it was wrong and I failed you, and I have known it for longer than I admitted." Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "I forgive you, Dad," she said. "But forgiveness isn't a return ticket. You should know that." He said he did. She believed him. It was not a reconciliation so much as the end of a war, the bodies cleared, the terms acknowledged, the territory not regained but at least no longer contested. Marcus called too. He left a voicemail she listened to once. He said he had never stopped loving her. He said he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He said he hoped she would give him a chance to explain. She did not call back. There was nothing to explain that she had not already understood. Some people leave because they do not value what they have until someone else shows them the price. She had no interest in being a lesson revisited. She sent one text, "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." She didn't wait for a response. 6 months later, Ji-hoon drove them to a private stretch of coastline outside Jeju City, just the three of them, no staff, no photographers. Nothing but the sound of the ocean and the last light of a day that had been warm and unremarkable in the best possible way. Ethan had been uncharacteristically quiet on the drive. Jasmine had assumed he was tired. He was not tired. He reached into his coat pocket on the beach and produced a small velvet box with the solemnity of a boy who had been trusted with something significant and intended to honor that trust. "Mom," he said, holding it out. "Ji-hoon asked me to give you this part." Jasmine looked at the box. Then at Ji-hoon, who had dropped to one knee on the sand without hesitation, not performing, not producing, just present in the way he had learned to be present. "I spent 6 years not knowing you existed," he said. "And the last year understanding that you are the most extraordinary person I have ever met. Not because of what you endured, but because of who you chose to become anyway." He paused. "I know I am asking you to trust a man who arrived late. I am asking anyway. Let me spend the rest of my life being early to everything that matters." Ethan watched his mother with eyes that were both his father's and entirely his own. She opened the box. The ring inside was simple, one stone, clean setting, the kind of thing chosen by a person who understood her completely. "Yes," she said. Ethan pumped his fist. Ji-hoon laughed, which was a sound Jasmine had decided, somewhere in the past several months, that she wanted to keep hearing. They were married the following spring, in a small ceremony on the coast. Ethan walked his mother down the aisle in a suit he had insisted on picking himself, his chin lifted, his steps deliberate, performing the role with a gravity that made several guests cry before a single vow had been spoken. When they reached the end of the aisle, he kissed his mother's cheek and said, quietly enough that only she heard, I knew he was the one when he learned all the capitals without me even asking. She laughed through her tears and handed him off to his seat. She married Han Ji-hoon in front of 40 people and the open sky and the son who had made her a mother before she was ready and taught her. In 6 years of school pickups and late nights and geography competitions and maps drawn in careful pencil. That family is not inherited. It is built. Deliberately. Imperfectly. And with the knowledge that the people worth keeping are the ones who show up, not when it is easy, but when it costs them something. At the reception, Ethan stood on his chair to give a toast no one had asked for, but everyone agreed was the best of the evening. I'd like to say, he announced, with a gravity well beyond his years, that my mom is the strongest person I know. And my dad is still learning the capitals of North Africa, but he's trying. And now nobody can take us apart. The guests rose to their feet. Jasmine Monroe, now Jasmine Han, looked at her husband, her son, and the life she had rebuilt from the wreckage of everything they had tried to take from her, and understood, with the quiet certainty of a woman who has been tested and remained standing, that she had won the only thing that ever actually mattered. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't yet, like and subscribe. There's more where this came from.